Seder Atifat Hatalit. The order of wrapping the talit. Hela, could you do me a favor? If you go over to the bookcase, behind this table. The one on the right behind the table. You'll see 3 shelves down. No. Yeah, that bookcase. 3 shelves down, there are a bunch of red books. The first one on the right. Yes, thank you very much. How do you wrap yourself in your talit in the morning? Kodem shemitatef b'talit, thank you very much. Before a person wraps himself in his talit, this is for me. You want? You could use it too. Yesh nohagim lomar psukim. People have the custom to say these verses. B'chi nafshit Adonai, Adonai Elohei gadol damod, midvad aravashta, oteo kasalman, HaShamayim Kehillat. People have a custom to say all kinds of verses before they put on their talit. V'nohagim ken, those who have this custom to do that, yizharu lomar psukim achar shebechu b'chot Torah. Should make sure that they have first made the blessing on the Torah before they say these verses. Sometimes people want to put on their talit at home and walk to shul, but they didn't yet say the blessings of the Torah. It's okay, but
the blessing of the Torah, you mean the litat blessing?
No, the blessing on the Torah, like Asher b'charban mikol amim v'tanat right? Because how could you say verses from the Torah until you have first made a blessing on those things? Yeah, very good question. Then we go to the top of page 145. Even though Shemikar Hadin, that according to the basic halakha, En chova lihitatef betzitzit ke'atifat ha'yishmaelim. You do not have an obligation to wrap yourself in your talit like Yishmaelim, like the Arabs. Remember we mentioned that some people have this custom to wrap their head and throw it over their shoulders. This is not a must according to halakha. Because what it says in the Torah, when it talks about tzitzit, Gdilim ta'aseh lecha al arba knafot ksutech, that you should put tzitzit. Gdilim are the other word for tzitzit in the Torah. Gdilim. Gdilim. Gimel daled yud. Gdilim.
Second line on page 1.
Yeah, Gdilim ta'aseh lecha al arba knafot ksutecha asher techazeh bo. That you should put tzitzit on the corners of any clothing which you cover yourself in. And we know from the other chapter of tzitzit that it's 4-cornered garments. But what do you see from here? Do you have to wrap yourself up in any certain way? Or just wrap yourself up?
It doesn't say any particular way.
It just says that which you wrap yourself in.
Yeah. Did you discuss the whole thing in Yishmaelim last week?
No, we just mentioned it for a second.
Why Jews would borrow a minhag from the Arabs and do that?
Very good. So we're going to do that in just a minute.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Hainu kisui guf bilvad, meaning just covering the body. Kidach shebnei adam mitkasim b'tzutam, just like any person wears their clothes. Pamim b'kisui rosh b'beged, sometimes when they cover their head. Pamim b'gilui rosh, sometimes they uncover their head. Mikol makom minhag Yisrael, the custom of the Jewish people, lehitatef b'tzitzit, to wrap themselves in their tzitzit, ke'atifat ha'yishmaelim, the way the Muslims do. B'sha'ah she'mevarech al talit, in the time when he's making a blessing on the talit.
It's the Yishmaelim are putting on a turban, or their clothes. What are they putting on that way?
The Yishmaelim used to have, and some still do, like an upper body cover. Will cover the body and the head. It was like wrapped.
Like
if you know what I'm saying.
We see of some of the Sephardic rabbis in
Morocco. Yes, exactly. It's kind of a flowy scarf head cover thing. That's the way when it means of wrapping. Very good, right? Very good. It wasn't just the head covering; it covered the upper body as well. How many people have this custom to wrap themselves up in their talit like that?
I don't, but I mean I've seen it.
Yeah, Chabad you see it a lot.
Sfaradim also do it. Really? Very interesting. What do you do?
I just listen and then put it over my shoulders.
I put it over my head, pretty full length, and then...
So you do it, okay.
That's what you're talking about.
Right, exactly what I'm talking about.
I thought you said just the shoulders, but it's hanging down.
I put it over my head.
You make a blessing, or did you put it on?
No, I make the blessing, I put it over my head, and then just take it off my head and put it on my shoulder.
Okay.
But I don't.
But you don't like wrap it around
no.
and
But I see quite a few people
do that.
You know, I feel a little out of place, but you know.
So when I came to yeshiva, I'm not going to lie to you, it was the first time I saw people doing it. I must have not paid attention to Chabad when people did it. It's not how I was taught by my bar mitzvah, and I think my father's pretty religious, so he didn't teach me to do that. And how come we don't do what you're supposed to do? And people said, oh, you have to know, you're doing something wrong, you have to wrap it up like that, and I got all kinds of criticisms. What I learned very quickly was most Jews are not familiar with all Jews' customs. And it's okay to say, oh, that's not my custom, but to say that's not a custom is generally going to be a mistake, because if you go to the Jewish community, you have the craziest customs in the Jewish community. So chances are, if you see something happening, it was a custom somewhere to do something. There are people who at their Pesach Seder have a custom to hit each other with leeks.
Yeah.
There's such a Jewish custom. So I don't know, if I would see it, I would say, that's not what you do at your Seder. But I guess for some people that is. I want to read to you from...
Maybe we should do that in Yom Kippur.
You hit each other with leeks.
Don't take a bite.
I want to read to you...
Those leeks are getting very tasty on Yom Kippur.
I will confess a sin to you.
Okay, I'm listening.
You ready?
Yeah.
The fact that I use sin, which is a Christian word, bothers me. I use sin today because I argued with somebody that you shouldn't use the word sin. So that's why I use the word.
Right? It's like being off the mark.
Yeah, and I've realized like doing something incorrectly, changing from the order of the world that Hashem wanted us to do. For example, an averah is like, in Hebrew, they use in modern Hebrew like a traffic violation. It's called an averah. When you get your ticket, they tell you how many averot you did. Yeah, that's how they use it in Israel. It's more of like breaking the rules than a sin. A sin is, I don't know what a sin means. I don't even know what that, it just sounds too Christian for me.
That's what you go to a confessional with.
There's a rabbi who makes a lot of money from making Jews look bad. So I've recently tried to keep him away from the Jewish people. But one of the people said, oh, the reason you don't like Rabbi so-and-so is because he says things the way they are, and he doesn't say it with a silver lining. Sure, we once had in our history, I'd say the reason why he's the only rabbi who does such things, because we once had in our history a very holy rabbi who said things the way they were, and he didn't say it with a silver lining, and 2,000 some years later, he's still being punished for it. Who am I talking about? No, Rabbi. Eliyahu Navi.
Oh.
What am I talking about?
Oh, you would think of Yirmiyahu, perhaps.
Eliyahu. What was it? Eliyahu's being punished? Yeah, every time you go to a Brit, oh, this is Eliyahu on Navi's chair. Oh, look, Eliyahu is here. Do you know why Eliyahu comes to Britot?
Because he didn't have faith.
Say what you know what you're saying.
He didn't have faith in that the people would do a Brit Milah.
Okay, if you look in the Tanakh, Eliyahu Navi says twice, in one chapter, the Jewish people have trampled the halachot, they violated the Brit Milah, they don't do anything. That he was saying bad things about the Jewish people. They were true, but they were bad. And one text in the Mishnah tells us, the same text in the Zohar adds a little bit more, but they say, Amallah HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Chayecha, on your life I swear, that because you spoke bad, the Jewish people don't observe the law of Brit Milah, that I will make sure that until the end of time, you must be at every single Brit and bear testimony that the Jewish people do perform the Brit Milah.
I wouldn't like to see
That's a punishment?
The punishment.
I wouldn't like to see his appointment book.
It's now. What does that mean? How does he get around? Maybe Santa Claus comes and gives him a hitch. I don't know what happens exactly, but
On Pesach he's busy.
the truth is that we're not supposed to speak bad about the Jews. We're allowed to critique and to correct and to change. That this is not okay. Let's change to do something else. But to make it your life's mission to knock other people on their head is not the Jewish approach to self-improvement. It doesn't work that way.
So does Yirmiyahu get a pass because Hashem forced him to do it?
The Nevi'im had a hard time with this. And you'll see the Nevi'im who didn't suffer consequences for it are because they didn't choose. They didn't choose to do this that way. They would have rather have done it a different way, but they're prophets, then they have to say what they're told. How did I get here? A sin. I tell you about a sin. I told you about this guy. You have to know certain things in your life. When you find someone doing something that you've never heard of before, hello, where do you come from? We weren't born yesterday. We know there's to stand your ground. So when I came to yeshiva, this is what I'm confessing to. Confession, another word. Yeah. When I came to yeshiva, I was in a very big crisis of faith. Not so much faith, like identity crisis. What in the world am I? I felt as much in place in yeshiva as like a Christian pastor feels in the middle of Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur. Like nothing was the same to me. Not the way people dressed, not the way they spoke, not the way they read Hebrew, not the way they believed in things, not the way they... all kinds of things were different for me. And don't think that I grew up in some isolated Sephardic bubble. I didn't. I barely knew I was Sephardic when I was growing up. I grew up in a Chabad synagogue. I went to a pretty Ashkenazi day school. I can tell you that I did not learn one Sephardic thing in my life in San Diego. Not at home, maybe a song or two, whatever. We knew we were Sephardic, but it wasn't this strong Sephardic identity. So I came to yeshiva, and then all of a sudden, I met a whole new world of people. They hate Chabad. They think that the school I went to wasn't religious. I thought it was very religious. But then all of a sudden, you meet Sephardic. Oh, you're Sephardic must mean you're a second-class citizen because you're not really Jewish. I had to meet all... I didn't even know what this is. What are you talking about? I do a lot of soul-searching to figure out what I was.
Which is very good.
And then Baruch Hashem,
I have to give you credit. I mean, I saw that world, and I said, I can't go there. I have to learn on my own.
Right.
You actually went there. I survived.
I served my time.
Right.
And Baruch Hashem, I was in that world for 5 years, and every one of those years was different for me. It was a different journey. And meeting Peretz for me was what settled me. I found a place that truly resonated with me. I was very Sephardic, but Rav Peretz teaches all kinds of Torah from all kinds of places. And Rav Peretz, the way he speaks about the Lubavitcher Rebbe and other big rabbis, is the way he speaks about the Baba Sali and other such rabbis. It's the same tzaddikim, righteous are righteous, and less compartmentalizing going on where we came from. And the truth is that in my journeys and my discoveries of becoming who I was, I connected much more to my traditional Sephardic side, be it my Moroccan side, than I did to my Yemenite side. And I'm telling you this is a personal thing, because I know some people, I've been places, people they judge me. He's not Yemenite enough, or he's not... At the end of the day, there's two things. There's a person's heritage, where they come from, but less important than a person's heritage, and forgive me for sounding heretical, is what does their soul actually need. You have to do that calculation. What does my neshama need? I don't believe that just because somebody was born in Poland, that he must forever live his life as if he was still living in Poland. That he's a different person living today in a different country. There's certain Torah. Torah is the truth. It doesn't change. But certain things... And for me, as a person who had grown up speaking Hebrew, the same reason why I could not pray ever in my life in an Ashkenazi accent, because that's not... I speak Hebrew, so how can I mess up the way I speak Hebrew when I'm speaking to God, of all people, in the wrong way? It just didn't make sense to me. And so when, in my Yemenite tradition, the same thing. I can prove to you time and time over that the Yemenite pronunciation of Hebrew is probably what they sounded like when the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. I can prove it to you. But I don't speak that kind of Hebrew when I speak to my mother, when I speak to my wife, or when I speak to my rabbi. And when I speak to my God, I hope that He won't damn me in hell, Christian words, because I choose to speak to Him in the language that I understand. Just like another person would choose to speak in English, so I choose to speak in the Hebrew that I speak. And that hasn't taken away from me the knowledge of certain traditions that I do that are Yemenite. And one of them is this. When it came to understanding this halakha, so do we wrap ourselves up? Am I Sephardic on this? Am I Yemenite on that? What am I? Just today in the morning I had someone call me up. It was a very funny question. I'm the Sephardic rabbi here, and someone reached out and said, "Oh, my son, he needs help putting on his tefillin Sephardic. Can he come over just for 5 minutes to your house?" I said, "Absolutely, you can come for 5 minutes to my house, but I don't know how to tell you to put on tefillin Sephardic. I won't lie to you, I don't know how to do it."
Is there one Sephardic way to put on tefillin?
Yeah, one Sephardic way to put, pretty much 1.5. One Sephardic way to put on
So
tefillin.
there's more than one Ashkenazi.
There's 2 Ashkenazi ways to put on tefillin, and maybe 3 if you count Chabad. Maybe some people don't know how to put on tefillin too, right? that could be. Yeah, but when
Complicated.
I wrap my tefillin Yemenite, so I would love to help the guy who wraps his tefillin Sephardic, but I really don't And I've done it before. I just don't remember how to do it, so I couldn't help him out. So what did I do? I sent him a YouTube video. And that's the way I would have learned also. Baruch Hashem for YouTube. When it came to the halachot, I'd go back and say, listen, the sources. We have to look at the sources. And then there's also a tradition. So for me, I want to read to you from the Yemenite Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. This is the Code of Jewish Law for Yemenites in the world of 2015. Written by Rabbi Yitzchak Ratzabi from Bnei Brak.
So it even has YouTube addresses in there.
I'm sure. This is a rabbi very famous in Israel for being an upholder of Yemenite tradition. Although controversy on him as well, like any other good rabbi in the world. But I'm not a student of his. I didn't learn by him. But he's a very good recorder of Yemenite history. For example, when I had to discover, I don't have a watch. When I had to discover, do we keep Chalav Yisrael? Do we not keep Chalav Yisrael? All these kind of things. So I saw Rabbi Moshe Feinstein who says today you don't have to keep Chalav Yisrael. And I saw the Chazon Ish write a similar thing. I said, but what do the sources say? I can't change a law that's 2,000 years old because of something somebody wrote 40 years ago. I started doing research. And look what I found out. That in Morocco and in Yemen, nobody kept Chalav Yisrael. Not for 5 years. For hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. There are some Sephardic communities that since the time of Maimonides didn't keep Chalav Yisrael. Since the Rambam. And all of a sudden, whoa, this is a much older tradition than Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Just now, somebody asked me if I could write a book on it. Even just 5 pages, 10 pages. People should know when you don't do what's called Chalav Yisrael today, you're not any less religious than somebody else. For hundreds and hundreds of years, Jews around the world haven't done this. So the fact that some Jews have, doesn't mean to make you a second-class citizen. So when I looked at, so they're telling me to wrap my talit, I'm not doing it right, I said, I'm going to go look up the sources. Let me read to you. En min hagenu, it is not our custom, hitatef betalit, to wrap ourselves in talit, ke'atifat ha'ishmaelim, the way that the Muslims do it. This source, the Jews have been doing this since the time of the Geonim. When are the Geonim? Between who and who?
The Amorim and
Very good. Between the Talmud and the Rishonim. Yeah, a very old time, before the Rambam.
What year? What century?
After the Talmud, whenever that is.
Well, I heard what you said. I just want to try.
No, I'm not good with numbers, but I gave you a sheet once with all these dates on it, right? So if you look in there, it'll tell you.
And that's somewhere here.
Somewhere in there. So B'ezrat Hashem, maybe one of you could help me out.
Here.
You haven't? Oh. Not that one, there was a second one that went along with it.
All the time.
There's should be here.
We will find it.
Yeah.
So the Gaonim say that you have to wrap your body up like an Arab would do it when he was getting dressed in the morning. Which means that a person should really, it depends, to their eyes, to their mouth. Everyone had a different opinion about how you do this. But that's what the Gaonim say. V'gam en ananu magbin tzedei talit mizeh u'mizeh ktefayim, says Rabbi Ratzabi, we don't throw our tzitziot over our shoulders like the many people do. Actually, in Yemen, the only people who ever did that was the Khatan. When a groom got married, and when they would wrap him up, he would do some kind of fancy wrapping with throwing it over their shoulders. Let's just pause here. There's a rabbi that argues with the Geonim. His name is the Baal HaItu, or known in Ashkenazi circles as the Itter.
Not the tour.
No, not the tour, the Itur. Right? The Itur, he writes, no, we don't do all this. We just wrap up ourselves in a talit like you would when you're wearing normal clothing. But we have to know, there's a halakha. 2 tzitziot in front, 2 tzitziot in back. That what you see like in Reform temples, people, they wear like a scarf.
Yeah.
And all the tzitziot are in the front.
Right.
That is not a kosher way to wear a talit. A person who wears talit like that doesn't get a mitzvah of wearing talit. Though there are some Yemenites who do something like that, they hold it in their arms. I'm not getting into that custom, that's not the mainstream Jewish custom. But you should know that this has big ramifications that you might not be familiar with. Jews, they like to pick on people. You know that? So, we like to pick on people. Especially on details that are very insignificant. But somebody once came to Rabbi, I noticed that you're not kissing your tzitzit properly during Shema Yisrael. I said, okay,
What's he doing watching?
Why don't you educate me, please? Let's sit down. What was he doing watching me? He should have been saying Shema.
Right,
I don't know.
Exactly.
It's like the rabbi who comes and says, I saw you weren't covering your eyes during Shema. I said, how would you know? It must be you weren't covering your eyes either. So he came to me, you have to hold all 4 tzitziot in your hands, not just the 2 front ones. How many people have that custom? To hold all 4?
I do. To hold all 4.
Most people. Most people have the custom to hold all 4 tzitziot in their hands. Sure, this is the custom brought down by in the Mishnah Berurah, the custom brought down by the Lubavitch Rabbi.
And in this part of Siddur, it says
it in the book.
Just before you get to Shema, it says grab 4.
All 4. When it says the 4 corners of the land, that's the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai says to grab all 4. But people forget, the Shulchan Aruch says only to hold the front 2. And Rabbi Mashash writes only to hold the front 2. The reason being, the front 2 tzitziot have how many knots? How many knots does your corner have on it?
Those numbers.
Oh,
42, not twirls, knots. How many knots?
7?
5, very good. Good guess. 5 knots. So if I'm holding 2
I know how
tzitziot,
many you're supposed to have. The question is...
how many of them have fallen off?
Yeah, you keep looking at it and say, is that a knot or is that...
That's halakha for next time. If you hold 5 knots, how many knots are you holding? 10. Rabbi Yosef Karo, deviating from his normal tradition, says that we hold the 2 front ones because they correlate. He never writes stuff like this. Because they correlate to the 10 sfirot that exist in the order of the world. And that's why we hold 2. We don't have 20 sfirot, we have 10 sfirot. And we hold the 2 front ones. The Vilna Gaon gives a different reason. The Vilna Gaon broke Ashkenazi tradition, and he only held the 2 front ones also. And he said because he believed in extreme. I don't believe that he's correct. I'm not arguing with him, I just don't believe that he's correct. I'm not saying that people who hold 4 are wrong. Too many big rabbis held their tzitziot, all 4, for it to be wrong. It's a custom, it's not a halakha here. The Vilna Gaon holds the moment you hold all 4 tzitziot in the front of your body, you are no longer receiving the mitzvah of wearing tzitzit. You're no longer receiving the mitzvah of wearing tzitzit.
To hold all 4.
Oh,
Because now all 4 are in the front. It's supposed to be 2 in the front, 2 in the back. They don't tell you that in the Siddur in English.
Very
Do
careful
that.
to keep
Yeah, it's all 4.
Make sure the 2 don't slip back.
So I'll tell you the truth is that my whole life I used to hold 4. And even after I learned this, I said, listen, the Ben Ish Chai says 4. The Siddur says 4. Who are you? And then I was once in my grandfather's Beit Knesset. And my grandfather looked at me funny. And he said, you're doing this wrong. You're only supposed to hold 2. If my grandfather says, okay, so he outweighs the Shulchan Aruch, he outweighs everything. My grandfather said 2, we do 2. And that's what I do, but it's not a must. Either way is correct. But these halachot all have a deep significance to them. To keep 2 in the front, to keep 2 in the back. Obviously for the time that you're kissing them, to hold all 4, it's not a problem. I don't agree with the Vilna Gaon, it's a problem. But just that's why there are 2 different customs. Some hold 2, and some hold 4. How did we get to how many tzitziot do you hold? When I came to reading this tradition, you have the Balei Tur. The Balei Tur says, no, we don't do this whole thing of wrapping up like the Arabs. We just put on a talit as if it's clothing. We wrap it over your shoulders. And the Shulchan Aruch agrees with the Itur, not like the Geonim. I mean, he agrees with a later source over an earlier source. And the only reason why Sfaradim why Sfaradim wrap themselves up like Arabs and they don't follow Shulchan Aruch is because here you have an interesting Sephardic halakha. Remember I've told you how Sfaradim are inconsistent? Sfaradim say they follow Shulchan Aruch, but they don't really. Sfaradim follow Shulchan Aruch except for when there's a doubt as to when to say Hashem's name. Or, remember we've been through these rules already. Sfaradim also don't follow Shulchan Aruch when the Arizal argues. When Rabbi Yitzchak Luria Ashkenazi argues, he says according to Kabbalah you have to do X, Y, and Z. Sfaradim don't listen to the halakha, they only follow Kabbalah. And here you come to an interesting place. The Arizal says there's something very Kabbalistic about wrapping your talit this way, and therefore, even though Shulchan Aruch doesn't say it, you should do it. And that's why the Sfaradim have developed a tradition that is contrary to the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. Now, Shulchan Aruch doesn't say you're not allowed to do that. He simply doesn't say that you have to do it. Which means that the person who called me out on it in yeshiva could have just said, okay, so you follow Shulchan Aruch, I follow Kabbalah, let's keep praying. But instead, he made it his issue to tell me that I'm doing something wrong. I'm not doing something wrong, I'm just doing something different. And so what we're going to read from now on inside of this, he talks about wrapping this way, wrapping that way. You have to know he's dealing purely in Kabbalistic fields, but not in the halachic fields. According to halakha, we follow Maran, you just have to wrap yourself in a talit.
So there's something very interesting. There's a difference between European Jews and North African Jews. What is that in terms of composure in synagogues? Big difference.
Are you asking me or are you going to tell me? But I want to hear. But so does the airplane.
Yeah. What do people sit on in Europe?
Benches, I don't know.
Chairs and benches.
Chairs.
What do they sit on in North Africa?
And cushions on the floor.
Exactly. So the whole relationship to getting up and down and the garments that you wear is different.
Interesting. Zev said something. It has not been documented, but he's right. When I went hiking with my Rabbi Shushan, you have to hear this. Rabbi Shushan was my, you know what a mashgiach is? Not the guy who checked your letters for bugs. What's a mashgiach? In yeshiva you have a rosh yeshiva, he's the head of the yeshiva. You have a minahel, who he's the principal. He does administrative stuff. And then you have Rabbi Peretz, who's the rosh yeshiva, the spiritual leader. You have Rabbi Katzin, who's the rosh yeshiva, he runs the whole place. And then you have Rabbi Shushan. Rabbi Shushan, which you may not hear me quote so much because he's not so much my teacher as much as my mentor. He's the one who deals with making sure that things are spiritually in line with the way you live your life. Are the students being taken care of? Are the students following certain standards? Are they whatever? Are they connecting to what they're learning? Kind of not a student counselor, but the spiritual leader of the student body, not necessarily the school. Rabbi Shushan is a brilliant man. He's a huge Talmid Chacham and a close student of Rabbi Peretz, perhaps one of his closest. Rabbi Shushan is also an Israeli army general of special forces. For many years, he was leading elite units into Gaza, through tunnels, Hamas, Hezbollah, all kinds of things that he did. And he had to retire after he sustained an injury to his body. And they had thrown a grenade into a building, and the terrorists had grabbed the grenade and thrown it back out. And it blew up in his chest. And he survived, Baruch Hashem, but his entire body is filled with shrapnel. And how do I know this? He would never have told us. Rosh Hashanah's like about this tall. He's a little guy. He's filled. Whenever we go to the kotel, he has a special card because the security alarms, they beep like crazy when he comes through them. And he always has to show them, I'm an Israeli war veteran, and they let him through. Rav Shushan, every day comes time for lunch break, let's say 1 o'clock. Rav Shushan gets up out of his office, takes off his suit jacket, undoes his tie, rolls up his sleeves, and starts running. And he does a 2-hour run around Jerusalem. Doesn't stop running. I once tried to do it with him. He doesn't walk. Just runs every single day until 3 o'clock. Comes back to yeshiva. Don't ask me about showers and stuff like that. And continues to teach right where he left off from. This was a very close Rebbe of mine. Rav Shushan took us to ruins of a synagogue out in the middle of nowhere, Israel. We got us hiking out there. We trekked out to this old synagogue in the middle of some field somewhere from the times of the Mishnah. And you'll see the seating is pretty much on the floor. I mean, it's on the floor. People sat around on little, there are no cushions there, but like, you see their imprints. It's a very low bench, imagine. Very low. You're sitting cross-legged. And it's interesting because it's an argument between the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic rabbis. Are you allowed to cross your legs in the synagogue? And most Ashkenazi authorities prohibit such a thing. Right? To sit, because David, can I embarrass you? Like that. And if you would go to the kotel, you'll have somebody knock your knee off of you. They're rude like that. They'll push it down.
More in Ashkenazi these days than in Sephardic.
Sephardic rabbis agree that while you pray, you shouldn't sit like that, because you're supposed to have a certain composure. But just in the synagogue, how are you going to sit so many hours on the floor without sitting comfortably? And you will know there are differences. When I go to a Yom Kippur service in an Ashkenazi synagogue, and everyone, they open the ark and they close the ark, and they open the ark and they close the ark, and they open the ark, and it's like up and down, up and down. There's an Israeli kid song, sit down and stand up, for the whole tefillah is like this. And everyone gets an honor, and this one opens up, and then you open up, and the third guy opens up, but the whole time you have to stand and sit and stand and sit. We don't have such a thing in Sephardic services. You open up the Aron Kodesh when they take the Torah out. You open up the Aron Kodesh when they put the Torah in. And because of modern Kabbalistic Sephardic customs, we open up the Torah again at the end of services when they do that special tefillah for Parnasah. But aside from that, there is no standing up and sitting down. What Zev is saying, it could just be because it wasn't practical to get everyone standing and sitting. Whereas in Ashkenazi synagogues, and I've been to some very old Ashkenazi synagogues,
So when you do a Bina Makina, you don't open the ark.
So we don't open the ark when we do Avinu Malkeinu. We stand, but we don't open the ark. Very rarely do we open the ark in the Sephardic services in general. And the reason why Ashkenazim open the ark has a real tradition to it. The reason is, it's only done during very holy parts of the tefillah. It's meant to make an emphasis. Like, don't just stand up, we're standing up and opening up the ark. Like Anim Zmirot at the end of tefillah. Right? Which is why many people don't say Anim Zmirot at the end of tefillah. Because it's too holy to be said every Shabbat after tefillah. Different customs on these things. In this field is what I call gray area of halakha. You can't prove these things exactly, but you can probably assume that many of these customs originated from the fact what was practical, what was not practical, what was considered respectable in certain communities was not considered respectable in other communities. We sit down during Kaddish. In an Ashkenazi community, nobody would sit down during Kaddish. It's almost, you might as well, spit when the Torah is walking by. It's a crazy. And so when we Sephardic people, we don't even realize we're in Ashkenazi synagogue and we're sitting down, people are like, this guy doesn't care about God, right? But they're right, because in that community, how could you sit down during, you're praising God, exalting God, and you have the chutzpah to sit there? They're right, it's correct. But it's built out of different standards of tefillah. What was tefillah? What did it look like tefillah?
When we used to be upstairs, the men would sit down, the women would stand up.
When?
For Kaddish.
Why?
Because they learned from downstairs.
Yeah,
So what's the reason
That's funny.
Jews sit?
The Arizal sat down during Kaddish. And because the Arizal sat down, we sit down also.
What's the reason?
He didn't feel it was one of those things he had to stand up for.
All right.
But, I didn't know what the time was. But, the one who says Kaddish has to stand up. Some Sephardic communities are so extreme that it's almost an affront to the person who's saying Kaddish for you to also stand up while he's saying Kaddish. It's like, why are you stealing my show? And it's almost one of those things. But again, these are not halachot, these are just flavors of tefillah. I put up a piece, if you go to my Facebook page, from Rabbi Shlomo Krabach, about the key, musical key that the Ashkenazi high holiday services are on. And he plays the different keys and he shows that this is it's a major, I don't know, Zev, I'm not a musician, but he tells that this is a tune that is fitting for royalty. It's a special kind of tune. The Sephardic tune for Rosh Hashanah Kippur, it's like a party almost going on. It's not very somber or serious at all. Very few parts of it. There are some parts that are very emotional, but not somber and serious. And it's because two different communities captured two different elements of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, and both of them would do well learning from each other. It would do well if, in the middle of certain parts of Tefillah, we weren't talking and we actually stood up and pretended the Aron Kodesh was open, and it would do the Ashkenazim so well to dance a little bit on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. That's probably why the Hasidim were sent to bother them, because they danced the whole holiday.